Hey, Chad, man, I appreciate you joining me on this episode. We're going to kind of let everybody get an idea of what it was like through our road trip. Uh, when was that we did that? That was last year,
Mhm.
wasn't it? Yeah.
No, that was this year. That was almost right after I got off attack the
Oh,
next
that's right.
carrier.
That's after you got married when we made that trip. That's right. Yeah, it's been a few months back. It hasn't been
Yeah,
that long
because
ago.
the recording
It was
stuff
a
that we
great
did
trip.
last,
It was
yeah,
actually kind of cool. It was very cool in Texas. It's actually cold, man. If you when we were there in Randy's uh, there at the hangar. Hey, listen, before we get started, man, I just want to kind of give everybody a little bit of a background. You know, like JJ says, we got to back up and start from the beginning. Uh, when I come out of the desert, what I call coming out of the desert, started watching. I'll think of it here in a minute. Fieldcraft Survival. I'll think of his name here in a minute. Anyway, he said, "Man, if you got a platform, use it." And so I just kind of started shooting some videos, and I was doing yard care videos and just anything to try to have a hobby. And the next thing I know, Chad starts shooting audio podcasts. Then he developed his production company. So we come together, and through that, he started doing videos because I was doing the videos, and then he brought Chase over. Chase was the audio and an editor guy at that time.
yeah. So
And man, I
I can
can't
lay
thank
out that
Chase enough.
I can lay out that timeline for everybody real fast. Is so in the last show that we did together, we talked about how I had a mentor that told me you need to start a podcast and you need to write a book, right? And we were talking about the book that I wrote. Well, the podcast side of it came about was actually already in the works for about a year. I got a Blue Yeti mic while I was still in training, and while I was doing my public speeches and stuff, the idea is that I would go out and I would do a public speech for a large crowd, and then I would use the podcast to actually get into the woods. Well, and I had 4 or 5 people that were helping me do that. They were running slides for me or recording me or helping me curate my content and stuff like that. And just really passionate people that believed in what it is that I wanted to do. So the podcast thing was happening there, but we didn't put out any content because we couldn't get the quality the way that we wanted it to. So I ended up actually trading in my Yeti to a mentor of mine who wanted one because he was doing some stuff on his own. And I got one of his sound mixes. I got a Red Scarlet from him, and I bought like 3 $30 microphones and an old school mix board that is like, if I showed a picture of it to you, you'd think it was a dinosaur or from the Stone Age. And I got Chase on board because Chase was a small group leader that I had become close with, and he was also in the band as a worship leader type deal. And new music, and I had an ear for it. And I was like, dude, I don't understand anything audio wise. I have no idea what I'm doing. Would you want to come in and fix it and be a part of this thing? So Chase agrees, and we start recording these podcasts through COVID. So at the same time period that I'm writing my book, I'm also traveling back and forth to Lynchburg, Virginia, where my buddy Andre Denault was, because Andre was a big advocate and proponent of why I started this thing and helping me come up with ideas as to what type of podcast I wanted to do. And meanwhile, Dad is back home making these lawn care videos and these smoking videos, not smoking as in like cigarettes, but like smoking meats, right? So like using a smoker to make food. And that all started to kind of happen at the same time. And I had this idea, and some of you guys out there are going to laugh at this. I had this idea that I wanted to make a company that was going to be like the next Daily Wire, right? I was a fan of the Daily Wire. I was watching the Daily Wire live streams, and I was watching the live stream that they had whenever they made the announcement that they were signing Candace Owens. And I like immediately picked up the phone and I called my mom and I was like, Mom, I don't want to be the guy who gets signed by the Daily Wire. I want to be the guy who is the Daily Wire signing other people. And I started doing that. And that's how we developed a ton of different podcasts shows and stuff like that. We were brainstorming all these different shows that we wanted to be a part of. And so the West Meadow show was going to be a group talk show, and the Chad Garrett show came around because Andre told me that I needed my own talk show. And then Chase and Shelby leveraged me, and they were like, hey, you should really do this something in the realm of stories that's specifically story content. And that's how we got Story Dose. But we were trying to also do articles in the same way that the Daily Wire does, but we wanted ours to be less news-like and more culture commentary. And so I was like, well, we don't have a podcast that kind of fits the politics side of things. So I got in contact with this young kid down in Georgia and tried to sign him on. Eventually that fell through. And lo and behold, through the course of all of these other things, these other ups and downs that we're doing, Dad is still keep it on with his podcast. I say this as to the viewers and stuff like that, but is keep it on with his stuff. And I can't remember whose idea it was first, whether it was Chase's idea or my idea, because this is all happening before I had actually started dating my now wife. And I can't remember whose idea originally it was, but somebody in our group of people that were building this thing were like, why doesn't your dad have a podcast? It's like, I don't know. I don't think he wants one. He's more into the video side of stuff. And we hadn't even touched YouTube yet. And so, but we had seeing what you were doing with the videos and stuff, we knew that we wanted to eventually go into a video format, right? Like I said, we wanted to be like the Daily Wire. So we needed the finances, the money to get the cameras to do the different angles, et cetera, et cetera. And, which is funny because from a video perspective, we have just now at the Louisiana trip, got all of the things that we needed to actually have a production value the way that we wanted to in the early days, which I find to be very, very interesting. Then you told me one day, because you were watching Fieldcraft Survival with Mike Glover.
That's it, man. Hey, see this? It sucks getting old, people. I'm going to tell you right now. Mike, I am so sorry, dude.
It was Mike Glover. And
he is the reason why I started my podcast, Mike Glover.
And then you got Mike Drop that you were watching all the time with Mike Ritland and Sean Ryan's podcast and Frog Logic podcast. So you were into
Never Quit, Marcus Luttrell.
And then that kind of helped you eventually that led you down the road of finding all the Duck Dynasty offshoot podcast stuff, Duck Call Room and stuff like that. And eventually you came to be, and then eventually you told me, you're like, I want to focus on entrepreneurs and veterans. And then as you started going down that route, that road, it felt you came to me and you were like, well, I also think that I want to do this thing with faith, because I feel like there needs to be a faith-based portion to this thing, and they needed to be, at the time you wanted to keep them separate because you thought there would be two different audiences. All of that made sense. So we do about a year of podcast development where I think at one time the most shows, like independent shows that we had, because Andre had a show at one point and then I took over that show from him. I think we had 7 different shows or something like that. The number doesn't really matter, but we, like, within the first year we had exploded, and then COVID started to wane down and I had to go back into the office. And so all the time that I still had all the money to continue developing the podcast, but all the time that I had kind of went out the window. And so we slowed way, way down. And in the course of that, we've, the rest of it's kind of history, right? We continued to develop the video side of things. We bought lights and we got different cameras and we found different editing softwares to help us out. We eventually got the Black Magic Box. We shut down a lot of the other podcasts or joined them into the same thing. And then after the most recent rebrand that we kind of went through is we took the Shelter Hole and Let's Talk Fortitude, and we said, why are we doing these two things independently? Let's put them together. And so we did. We put them together, and it's been a heck of a ride. And like I mentioned in the last show, with the way that we've kind of rebranded, is Forerunner Productions is going in the direction that I feel God has always called me to go, which is into the narrative side of things and telling stories and trying to figure out like, well, I'm not walking away from Let's Talk Fortitude, especially, nor the multidimensional nerd, not Full Sail, which is what the Chad Garrett show got rebranded into. But to your point, whenever you talk about inspiration and getting into the video side of it, you had more expertise in the video world than we did when we started buying cameras. You were the one, like, I remember whenever we first looked into the Blackmagic switchboard, we just couldn't afford it. There was no way that we could afford it. And it was just, when you can't afford something, you do stuff the hard way until you can. And so it was years. And then you came to me and you were like, hey, they got this board. They're using this board. And I was like, yeah, it's a Blackmagic switchboard. It's like, yeah, I think that's it. And so we finally got this, we sold some old tools and crap like that and got this Blackmagic switchboard. And Lord have mercy, did that make the Louisiana trip so much easier to do. Because a peek behind the curtain is we were using 3 cameras to record all of our podcasts. And then I would sit down for somewhere between 3 and 5 hours, if not longer sometimes, per podcast, editing between the different angles because I had to pay attention to, I had to cut any dip ins or dropouts and splice stuff in, which is all part of the regular editing process. But I also had to sift through all 3 of the angles and get them all lined up audio wise and video wise to make sure they were all synced and cut between them and mix it down and make the thumbnail. And this is an arduous process, man. And now that we got the LA thing, the reason why we were able to crank those out so fast and put them out into the world so quickly is because I was basically editing in the seat using the switchboard, which is so fantastic. So for anybody that wants to know about podcasting or anything, I just basically gave you a crash course in all of that. But it's been kind of a ride. So that brings us up to in a very Cliff Notes version, brings us, at least my portion of the story, up to what we did whenever we went to Louisiana. What you looking for?
I'm trying to find, I've uploaded a picture. Just trying to find it. All right, let me see if I can come out here now. Now I'm uploading looking for the picture that JJ sent us that he took when you were sitting with your back to him of our setup there.
Oh yeah, I know what you're
And
talking about.
so I'm trying to get that.
Well, while you do that, I'm going to entertain our guests by giving them some coffee pouring ASMR. Doesn't that sound
Glad to
glorious?
get your mom in here.
I know it's on my Instagram for sure. But while he's looking that up, the way that the Louisiana trip kind of baked out, if I can keep from burning myself on my coffee, the way that the Louisiana trip kind of played out was we hopped in the car and we went out and saw a guy by the name of Randy Beausoleil. And Randy served with Dad in the Navy, and I'll let him tell more of the stories of that because there's some fun stories there. And Randy has a business partner now that was a Top Gun adversary pilot named Lucky Riley, and they had written a book together. And then they own a company together called Old 18 Outfitters. And it does fishing rods and outdoor gear and T-shirts and sweatshirts and all that kind of cool stuff. And Dad reconnected with Randy years and years and years ago and decided that he was going to try and get him on the podcast. And man, watching you go through the kind of, it was almost like a 9-month process of kind of playing phone tag with Randy here and there and there and here, and wondering if he was interested, or doing what we do whenever we're sensitive to the inclination. That's one of the things that I get from you, is that we are both very empathetic towards the nature of our guests and the people that we want. We want people to feel comfortable, because we're not the BBC, we're not the New York Times, we're not James O'Keefe. Like, we're not out to get people. We're here to have a healthy and constructive conversation. And we want to do our best to convey that to our guests. And so whenever we reach out to somebody and we're asking them to come on the podcast, we typically, which isn't exactly standard for the industry, we try and send everybody like a list of like, this is what we're going to talk about, even though typically you don't send those out in the industry unless it's requested. Because people that come on podcasts are usually confident enough in what they have to say to where if a conversation's going in a direction that they don't want it to go, that they just don't let it go there. But the back and forth that happened between you and Randy, that was so interesting. So it was a big deal for us to finally get to go out there. And I was really excited, having done Air Force Special Operations stuff in training. I was excited to get to meet a guy that had served and done the JTAC job that my older brother does, that I had originally signed up to do. So we head out and road trip together out to Houston, out to the Houston area. And then after that, we did a little puddle jump, basically back up the road into West Monroe, Louisiana. It's only about 4 hours up there. So we did like 14 hours one way and stayed the night there. And that hotel that we stayed in out there.
Hey, listen, man, that thing was sketchy, baby, at best. I'm sorry. No wonder Randy had me to stay with him the first time I went there. I should have known something was up when the Hampton Inn had bushes and stuff grown up around it, and it looked like a scene out of The Walking Dead or something. I should have known that we were, yeah. That's listen. I can shoot a whole podcast on that place for. I'm not even going to say it. I'm not going to throw them under the bus because who knows. But hey, listen, it's a place the first night. But hey, when we got all 3 recordings done, Randy's, we went ahead and headed to Louisiana.
Yep. Yeah, we got out of there and headed up the road. So that
I got that picture, by the way, so we're good to go once we get there.
So yeah, so then we head out to West Monroe. The first place that we go into, we stay the night out in Louisiana, and the next place that we stay at is or that we go to is Whites Ferry Road, right? We went to Whites Ferry Road.
Yeah. So let me back up a little bit. So I don't know what all you talked about with Randy and them, but look, because you're kind of low, you're not low whenever it plays back, Chad, but just kind of raise your hand or something. So I know you're trying to talk.
Okay.
Because it is louder in here than what I'd never hear you. So you kind of signal me.
That's all right.
His sound comes through really good once everything's downloaded. I don't know. This is all new to us. Or
maybe
you're
just old and hard to hear.
Anyway, Navy SEAL, Blue Noriega's boat, Top Gun pilot, and then Randy and Lucky both. I don't know if you said this, but
so hold on. Randy is the one that blew up Noriega's boat. Lucky was the Top Gun pilot.
Right.
You kind of like smashed them.
So I'm trying to catch up here real quick. And then they're in business together with Old 18 Outfitters, where they build fishing rods and they do lures and a few other things. So if you're into fishing, man, go hook those guys up and support them at old18.com. Great guys.
Look, I'll say, like, Old 18 is cool, but the coolest thing that they're doing is with their book Unwavered. And both of them are trying to go out and they recognize a similar thing that I talked about in the last podcast. They recognize that there is a lack of quality leadership, quality mental fortitude, which is exactly what this podcast is about and why you had them on that podcast. And also from a perspective of young men, there's an overt and directed intentional attack on masculinity in the men of our present era. And these guys have found that it is a passion of theirs to try and fight back against that, because they understand what it means for us as a society, and they understand what it means for us as a country specifically. And so they want to spend more time traveling and teaching. Now, one of the reasons why they wrote their book together is their book, Unwavered, which you can find at unwave.red. Okay, so Dad will put that up in the description here in just a second. But is the foundation. Their book Unwavered is the foundation that they teach on. So most of the time, whenever they go and teach, they say, hey, here's the book, read the book, understand the book, and then we'll come in and we'll teach you the advanced tactics for mental fortitude and the other stuff that we want to build on top of this thing that are going to really make you successful and send you over the top. So Old 18 is cool. Don't get me wrong. And I'm glad that that you brought that back up. But what they're doing at their website, unwave.red, with this book and with their traveling speaking tours, like, get a hold of these guys. If you're the leader of an institution or of a business, of a sports team at a major college or even at a high school or something like that, get their books into the hands of the people that you think that they need to know what it is that is going on, and then get them out to speak with you. Get them a part of your convention. If you're a convention leader or something like that, get them a part of it. They will go and speak anywhere that they feel welcomed to do so. And that's the direction that they really want to take their business and their company, and their partnership is the outfitters thing is a great way of them, making money. They make American-made products. All of their products are sourced here in America. The guy who makes their fishing rods hand makes their fishing rods. They're top of the line, made right there in Texas itself. So that's all good. But man, unwave.red is the place to go if you really want to know what Randy and Lucky are all about and get them out to speak at your venue, your event, your church. Yeah, there you go. That's the book. And check out the podcast too, because they go a little bit deeper into some of the stories that they tell in those books too, man. That was really cool to get to sit in there and to switch between those and to be in that airplane hangar and see Randy's plane and all that stuff. It was just talk about, like, you don't realize it, like it's a job whenever you're going in there and you're doing it. It's a job. It's what I do for a living specifically, right? And so you're kind of in business mode and making sure that everything goes right and that you're using your expertise to light the place and to et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, the way that you need to come across as a professional. But like, hindsight being what it is, having been there and realize who I was with and why I was there and what we got to talk about just a once in a lifetime experience. Really, really cool opportunity.
Yeah, I mean, he's actually a sniper. Those guys don't have just one job. They have to learn everything, because if they lose somebody's got to step up. Great bunch of guys. I mean, Randy's very candid. We had a great conversation about the guys that I was deployed with him, and maybe sometime I'll be able to get him back on here now that we can do this remote. And I know he would. I just got to give him a call. But anyway, yeah, it's a great book. Man, go on there and read it. He talks about his story, his childhood. We go a little bit deeper in the podcast on what the book is, but the book, there's just no substitute for the book. Lucky with his, we talk about the impact. He actually threw out his back and had back issues from landing planes on and off of the aircraft carriers. He talks about how violent that is.
Man, that's so funny, because having been stationed at Langley, where they keep the F-22s, which is our like 5th gen, 6th gen plane that we have in the Air Force, and it's no secret that we keep the F-22s at Langley, right? Like, you can drive out there and you can, or just look it up on the internet or whatever, and you can see them flying all the time. But seeing how like nice and easy these guys like let it down and just coast through because they can, and then to hear Lucky talk about, it's like, man, even when we're on the ground, because we're planning to, like, we know that we're trying to land on an aircraft carrier, bow, just slamming it down as hard as they can to make sure that they catch the ball.
So let me clear something up. When you watch the intro to the movie Top Gun, that's not staged. That's not theatrical. What you're watching is the real deal in action.
Especially Top Gun Maverick.
Each one of those Each one of those colored vest guys that you see on that deck, each one is a job. It's a job description. It's a job title. The purple, the red, the yellow, the green, they all have a title. That's how they distinguish between who does what, between ordnance, firefighting, the landingman, it's an OSR or officer signalman. Gosh almighty, I got to slow down. Or an LSE, landing signalman enlisted. There's you have shooters. Listen, it's the real deal. When you hear that those wire ropes tinging and tanging on the video, I mean that's real. Being an old Navy guy, I've never been on an aircraft carrier, but I can tell you that is real.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask. Is I didn't know if you had ever served on an aircraft carrier or not.
Been alongside them. I've been along the Coral Sea, the USS Enterprise, the Midway. I always had them alongside because I was on board an ammunition supply ship in the Pacific, and we were all the time doing underway replenishment, sending stuff over, and then during helo ops, I was on the firefighting crew, just inside off the flight deck.
Gotcha.
So yeah, that was that's the real deal. So when we left there, Randy and them it was cold and they did great. It was a long day.
I've got to stop right now, and I've got to get you to tell. You've got a couple of stories that you've told me and Richie over the years, but you have to tell the story about the dude that was used icy hot as deodorant or whatever it was. You have to tell that story. Do you know which one I'm talking about?
I think that was a football camp.
Okay. I thought that
was a football camp.
I thought that was in the Navy. All right, that wasn't in the Navy. I thought that. All right.
No, that was Keith Rose. We'd all run out of money. And listen, if there's kids here, don't let them hear this because you don't want them doing this stuff. But anyway, somebody had. Back then you got to remember, man, this was back in the '80s. So we had went to Maryland for a football camp as a high school, and the last day or two, and somebody told Keith if he put icy hot on his privates, they'd give him $10 or something. Yeah, he was a pogo stick for about a day. Anyway, so I digress. Let's get off here. So
that story always gets me, man. I thought
I will tell you a good one about Randy and I were deployed. I thought that the guy. So we got up the next morning. They were talking about how a couple of guys. Now listen, we were moored off the coast of Ibiza. We were on board the USS Hermitage, and so we had Liberty boats coming back and forth. And there were a couple of SEALs that missed the last Liberty boat coming over. And so we got up the next morning, man, that was just all the to-do in the world. Come to find out, one of the Marines, because we had a well deck on that boat. That was where we kept U-boats and stuff inside with the Marine Corps. But anyway, so the Marines had roving patrol on board the ship. And they had noticed these wet footprints, and they followed the footprints, and they'd come to the SEAL berthing compartment. We'll come to find out a couple of SEALs had missed the last Liberty boat, swam back to the boat, crawled up the anchor chain, and come back on board. So I thought they'd come to the stern gate, but Randy said they climbed the anchor. It's something that they used to do, frequently, trying to breach security on board ships and stuff, just testing them. But anyway, that was pretty cool. So anyway, that's one of the things that we got. The one of the first lessons that we were taught, because I went through the way that we went through special operations training in the Air Force, is that they actually modeled it after what they put the SEALs through, the guys that built this schoolhouse. So you go to basic training, and then after basic training, you go to what they call battlefield airman prep. And the Navy has their equivalent of a prep school before they send the SEALs to BUDS. But so we went to battlefield airman prep, and
the entire purpose of Battlefield Airman Prep is to make sure that we were in the top physical condition of our entire lives, and to learn how to take care of our bodies, and to basically learn how to treat ourselves and take care of ourselves like a weapon, right? To treat our bodies like a weapon system. And in the process of doing that, one of the things that our cadre taught us was, if you're going to do something you're not supposed to do, don't get caught. So we went out at one point and we stole, we dressed in our like compression suits, which were these all black, super tight fitting, like nylon kind of clothes. Think of like modern ninja suits or whatever, like a wetsuit almost. We had some dudes put those on, put their swim booties, their fin booties on, and basically, and their swim masks, and they blacked out the rest of their face and everything like that. And they stole one of the GOVs out of the MTL's office. They stole the keys to one of the GOVs, one of the trucks, and they went to Airman's Week with the squadron. So after basic training, you get moved into this 1 week, this 1 week reintegration period where they give you more freedom and they allow you to have free time and to go play pool and stuff like that, so you can like reintegrate into regular society again, type of thing. So before we got to BA Prep, we had to go to there, and so we went back there, or this crew of my teammates went back there in this truck, and they straight up stole the mascot, because outside of each one of the squadrons, they usually had this mascot, and this was this paper mache bulldog that was like the size of a dining room table. And they loaded it into the back of the truck, and like silent alarms are going off, and the entire squadron gets woken up, and the security forces gets called over, and they're investigating everybody, trying to see who snuck out or who did what. And they brought the bulldog, and we just had it sitting out on our drill pad, just out there for everybody to see. Nobody caught us, like 2 straight weeks. Nobody caught us. And so one Sunday, the reason why we did it is because we had jacked up and we had made our chief mad at us. And so that was our funny thing for Chief. And Chief's reaction to it is like, oh my God, they're going to kill me. Like he saw it, they're going to kill me. And one of our buddies, my buddy Bashida, was like, "Hoo-yah, Chief, can we keep him?" Like he was going to be the team pet. And he was like, "Yeah, get him up to the day room." So Chief was totally going to let us keep him. But the only reason we didn't keep him was because we couldn't get him through the doors. Now, he was so large. This bulldog was so big, we could not get him through the doors up into the dormitory, into our day room. We couldn't fit him through the door. So what we ended up doing is we ended up just leaving him out on the patio, and we made a sign for him, a metal sign. Don't know where we found so much free time to do this crap, but we made it like a metal chain that we put around his neck that says "Beware of dog."
Oh my God.
And the funniest part, it took him 2 weeks. It took him 2 weeks for security forces to find this thing. And the sad part is that where BA Prep is located at is right in front. It's the last row. It's a part of the last row of barracks that are on the base before you get to the security forces headquarters. And so they're driving past us every day, parking their cars, every patrol that comes through. And it took them 2 full weeks, man. Like, so crazy. That was the funny for us. That was our big funny.
So again, you can get this. You can get Randy and you can order. You can go to old18.com and order their book, or you can go. I think it's available on Amazon. I can't remember where all of it is available. But again, go to unwave.red. Reach out. Let them know that you heard about it from Jon G and Chad on the Let's Talk Fortitude podcast. I don't know that it'll get you anything. It may cost you more. He may charge you more. But anyway, reach out to those guys, especially if you have a corporation, you'd like to have somebody come in and talk to you about your mindset. and how to grow and be stronger in your mindset. These guys have got it. Please go check out the podcast with Randy Beaujolais and with Lucky Riley, and you won't be disappointed. So then we rolled into Louisiana.
Yeah, we started.
And boy, what a day. We rolled in, spent the night, got up early, went and recorded with Derek McQueen of Whites Ferry Road. If you've heard that before, Whites Ferry Road is where the Robertsons go to church. Al still preaches there. Phil teaches Sunday school there every morning. But it's just a great bunch of people. But Derek is part of Celebrate Recovery with Brian Rucker there. And he and Brian now, do you remember what the name of their houses are? The business that they just bought, where they're recovery houses that they bought into to help people who are recovering from addictions.
Yeah, give me 10 seconds. I'll find it for you. You keep going.
It might be on my phone on there, but anyway, that was Derek has a tremendous testimony. The guy has a heart the size of Louisiana. Everybody, I got to be honest with you, man. I don't know, Chad, you may feel the same way. I don't know, but I just felt like they rolled out the red carpet. Derek really didn't know me other than being in a men's retreat. So let me back up. Like JJ says, we got to back up and go back to the beginning. So the reason why we are even in Louisiana was by the time I come out of the desert, I had knee replacement surgery. So through all that time that I had off, I started finding podcasts, and one was Unashamed. One, like Chad said, was Vigilance Elite. One was Mic Drop with Mike Ritland. The other one was Team Never Quit with Marcus Luttrell, Lone Survivor. And then I found the Unashamed podcast. Also, Mike Glover. I was watching Mike about that same time. Pete Denny, Christian guy. Alan Hain, godly man, as far as I know, and the Pest and Lawn Ginger. There was got me a lot of encouragement. So through watching the Unashamed podcast, I started watching, because I didn't have a church at the time, started watching the WFR live stream, because this was right around COVID. So everybody's live streams were huge then, because there wasn't anybody in the church. So right about this time, the churches were opening back up. Everything was being relaxed. So I'm watching the WFR live stream, and all of a sudden Al and Mike come on. Mike Kellett, Al Robertson, Mike Kellett come on doing announcements and said, hey, we're getting ready to have our very first WFR men's retreat. I immediately went on there, got on their app, went on there and registered. And I went back about 5 minutes later, and it said unavailable. It had sold out that fast.
5 minutes.
And I told your mom, I said, Ev, I said, man, I don't know if I got in or not. She said, what? I said, it says it's unavailable. It's sold out. So, and this was the first one they've ever done. And they were getting help from other churches around them. That's where we're going to go in with all this other stuff. So anyway, come to find, I did find out that I did get in. Everything's cool. And then I started having guilt because I felt like maybe I kept somebody from in their church from going. And long story short, I got a phone call from a guy by the name of JJ. And he said, man, when I saw your name, they're prayer partners is who they are. And they kind of help get you there. And anyway, it was really good. And JJ, as a matter of fact, I was just texting with him a few minutes ago. Well, he wanted to know when we're coming back. So went to that retreat, and I met JJ, Corey, Jeff, Andy, Derek, Brian. There's Ryan Lee, who's a worship leader. There are Chad Johnson that was there. There's tons of guys. Anyway, I can't sit here and go through all of them. So I stayed in touch with JJ, and it just didn't work. The first retreat they had that I wanted to go back, we were moving down here to Florida. Then the next one they had, I was going to go. We got hit with Hurricane Ian, and our final repairs were being done. So finally, I got a hold of Chad. I said, Chad, we're going to go do a podcast. So we went to Texas, come back to Louisiana. And I got to say, man, I knew Corey was on fire for God, but you have to go watch his. You have to go watch. I tell you what, Jr. Fix. I'm good friends with Jr. Fix. And I met him the second time. You didn't go back with me on this trip. This is the one I went back when I went to the reunion, the WFR reunion. And I met JR at a baptism. Dude, they were baptizing. Corey and Jeff were baptizing dudes in the Ouachita River at the park, and it was up. It was flooding, and they were out there baptizing people. I need to get some pictures up on here too. Maybe you start talking here, man. I'll put some of them up. But I'm going to show you the where we recorded at JJ's Ranch.
Yep.
So let's see. Here we go. So that's when we were shooting with Andy.
Yep.
And JJ took that picture behind Chad, and we did. Man, he just opened everything up to us, and it was so we shot Andy there, Andy Roberts. We shot Corey there. We shot Jeff Fitz there. We shot JJ there. So, man, it was just boom, 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 boom.
And the biggest part,
we were there 3 hours with JJ.
Yeah, I mean, well, the biggest thing for me was the pack up and resets, man. So when we were in Houston, we set up, we got there, unpacked, figured out where all the outlets were and everything like that, and set up for the individual interviews, which we did in front of the plane. And then they had a little table and a little meeting area that was in the back part of the airplane hangar. So we changed setups for that. And even just unplugging everything and moving it over and getting the cameras reset and making sure that they were focused and making sure that the lighting was right and stuff like that. Like when you're in the film world, you understand that resetting for lights takes about an hour. It just does. Doesn't matter where you're resetting to. If you got to redo your lighting setup, it's going to take you about an hour. And we were able to do that in Houston in about 30 minutes. We rushed it a little bit and to make sure that we were respectful of our guests' time. And then when we got out to West Monroe, we got there, slept, woke up, went to WFR, unloaded the truck, set everything up for the podcast that we shot with Derek McQueen, tore everything down, packed the truck back up, drove back out to JJ's, went into JJ's place, and then set back up again for another podcast that we had set up. And then we slept, and then we pretty much just had rolling setups after that. But that setup and tear down, setup and tear down, like we were considering doing that 2 or 3 times in a day. And we learned on this trip that twice it will smoke you if it's just the two of us, because you're the one that needs to stay entertaining the guests and making sure that they're prepped to talk and that you're being personable, which is exactly what you need to be doing. You don't need to be doing the setup and tear down stuff. One man doing setup and tear down or resets on lights and stuff like that is a chore. That sucked, right? For lack of a better term, man. Like that was the hardest part of the whole thing. And I want people to understand that whenever I talk about things like being in the suck or going through something hard, or whenever I say that something sucks, that probably means that I loved it. One, I'm kind of a masochist like that. And number two, I don't really think that anything good in this life comes from taking things easy or from doing the easy thing. So if I'm going through the suck, I'm in my happy place. But I could not imagine trying to do that 3 times in a day alone. Like, even with your help, whenever you're not entertaining the guests and stuff like that, and you're helping me load things up and pack stuff up and get it in the truck, I still could not imagine setting that thing up, tearing it down, setting it up, and tearing it down 3 times in a day. And I'm so glad that we did not do that. That ranch and the men that are in West Monroe.
Stick with me here, man, Chad.
I wanted to make
a couple pictures here.
Well, I wanted to say this anyway. There's something extremely. You say all the time that revival is broken out in West Monroe, Louisiana. I would say it's slightly different. I would say I have rarely encountered a caliber of true disciples the way that I encountered the men in West Monroe. There is something different about the caliber of discipleship and learning and iron sharpening iron and community that is going on between the men that exist on that or in that area. JJ and I think his name's Johnny, right? And Corey and just a lot of these guys, man, the way that they connect and pour into each other and the caliber of young men that comes to their Bible study, we're talking like 13, 14, 15, 16-year-olds that have gone through more than most men go through in their entire life, having watched friends overdose, having watched or been a part of parents or families that don't want them, that send them away or that don't pay any attention to them. They end up homeless at that age and stuff like that. And the way that these men pour into these boys, not in a condescending way, but in a way that respects and treats these young boys as though they are young men in and of themselves, right? It's a level of respect that they are given. Now they understand that they are not as mature in their faith or mature at all in their faith, but they've been through enough life to be respected and to be talked to as an adult. And the way that they treat each other there is just, it's on a different level. I haven't, like, even on the teams, even whenever I was in special operations, man, there's a little bit of nitpicking and stuff like that, but it was mostly, it was a very deep level of camaraderie, however, usually very immature. These men showed a level of that, a similar level of that kind of camaraderie, but there was not just a maturity about them from a secular, just sociological, psychological perspective. There was a level of spiritual maturity between these men that they share that it's incredibly unique. It is incredibly unique.
So I was talking about those guys baptizing in the Ouachita. This is Corey. This is a guy that he had helped lead to the Lord.
Corey's on the left.
He talks about that, I believe. No, I don't know if he talks about this one in his testimony, but I'm going to have Corey back on. Corey's actually starting his own podcast now too. So hopefully we'll be able to get Corey on again, which I know I'm going to try to. And then, so Corey, JR said it best, Chad. JR told me the other day, he said, man, if there was ever a prophet, he said, of God, he said, Corey and Jeff Fitzgerald, he said, those guys are just amazing. He said, you talking about modern day disciples. I mean, and prophets just go out. Warriors for Christ, man. I mean, the people that they're baptizing, I mean, they're baptizing people in the river, in the lake. I mean, it's like every weekend. And I actually sit in on they don't go to WFR. These guys don't. The guys that I'm talking to you now, they all go to North Monroe, and I actually attend via Zoom their life group every Sunday morning, and they've accepted me in, and it's awesome. And I get to listen to these guys, and I'm just in amazement. And then this one is, and this at the same time, this is Jeff Fitzgerald with the FCA. That's one of his guys that University of Louisiana Monroe, ULM. That's one of their football players, and put him in the river and baptized him that day when I was there. JJ was there. That's where I met JR Fix. And JR and I talk. Actually, I had just purchased the book. JR's nephew in North Carolina, Chad, around Marion. They have a dairy farm, and so his nephew Jay, JJ's nephew Jay, is real inquisitive about the Bible right now, wanting to know about how to study and all that good stuff. So actually bought a copy of the C Plus Gospel and had it sent to JR for him to take up to Jay. And I said, man, if you can get Phil to sign it, because and here's why I did it, because he said, JR said, man, he loves Duck Dynasty, he loves those guys. I said, look, you're friends with Corey's mom and dad. Get John Howard to go take that to Phil Robertson or take it to the church and get it signed. It got there just in time. He wasn't going to be able to take it to the church and get Phil to sign it. So I said, take it somehow, get a hold of John Howard and get John Howard to get it signed for you. And I said, maybe that'll make it even more interesting and him even more committed to getting into it. But so I've read it, the C Plus Gospel. And if you've got a new convert, if you're a new creature in Christ and you're just starting your walk, or if you've got questions, you really haven't made that commitment and you still have questions about Christ and who he is and what it means to follow him and accept him as your Lord and Savior, go to cplusministries.com or just type in C Plus Gospel. And it's a book that Phil Robertson done as a Bible study for new converts. It's awesome. And I like to read things before I recommend them. And so that's why I went in and read it. And it was awesome. I really enjoyed it. It was even good for me.
Yeah.
And but anyway, that's I'm gonna take this off here now. So,
I'll put
go ahead.
I'm gonna put a plug in here for a book that I've been reading. That's so being in the film industry, the next project that we're working on ardently, the next project that's really on Forerunner Productions scope is our first feature film. And our first feature film, it's going to be a really big deal. It tells the story of Jacob wrestling with God and his conflict with his brother Esau. But it's not a direct adaptation. This is it is inspired by that story. It follows many of the themes in the heart of that story, but there's a lot of details that change. There's a lot of details that change in who the characters are and how the characters meet and how they connect to each other. And the reason why is because we're basing it in 1850s, roughly, Appalachia. And we're going to tell it as an Americana story. So you get this feeling of the Hatfields and McCoys kind of Yellowstone-ish sort of feel mixed with something akin to The Patriot that tells this story of Jacob and the place in his life that he has to go and wrestle with God. And in order to educate myself on this story, I have gone back into a book called Moses Wrote About Me by a gentleman by the name of Yosef Danieli. Yosef Rashamim Danieli. He is a Messianic Jew living in Israel. And his entire thing with the book is this idea that it is a quintessential part of the Messianic Jewish sort of belief system, and that is that the entire purpose of the Bible, the Tanakh, which is the Torah and the writings after the Torah that goes into Chronicles and Samuel and all the prophets and the book of Judges and all that stuff. So the Tanakh and the New Covenant writings, or the New Testament as we call it in the Western world, the entire purpose of them is to reveal Christ, is to reveal Yeshua, or Jesus as we call him in the Western world, and how there are portraits and foreshadowings of Yeshua all through the Bible, especially in the book of Genesis. And his book, Moses Wrote About Me, is a commentary on the book of Genesis that shows and highlights these portraits of Christ in the book of Genesis. So if you're a brand new Christian and you're trying to figure out what to do next in your faith, C Plus Gospel. If you are a Christian that has been a Christian and you're looking to take your studies deeper and you're curious to dive deeper into Torah and the Old Testament and understanding how our Jewish forefathers who founded the Christian faith, what they knew and the way that they thought about things and everything like that, I cannot recommend Yosef Danieli's book enough. It's called Moses Wrote About Me. And I want to make a note about that title because I didn't understand this when I first saw it, because I thought that Moses Wrote About Me was talking about Joseph, or and my mother-in-law, when she first read it, she was thinking that it was about her, right? That Moses wrote about me, that the me was supposed to put the shoes of the reader. And it's not. It's actually a direct quote from Jesus when he's rebuking the Pharisees, because the Pharisees think that Jesus is judging them or condemning them. And he's like, no, there is only one that I am not judging you. There is only one that judges you, Moses, in whom you say you believe. If you believe in Moses, then you believe in me, because Moses wrote about me. So it's this entire idea that there's a direct quote in the New Covenant writings from Jesus, from Yeshua, that says that the Torah is all about him. And so going in and reading that is fantastic. Joseph has a plan to do commentaries on every book of the Torah. So he has finished one, and it is released, his book on Genesis called Moses Wrote About Me. If you want to take your faith a step deeper, a step farther, that's the one that I would go to in a heartbeat, because you're going to see Christ in a way that you have never seen Christ before, because he's showing up all through history, not just in the New Covenant.
That's really good. I'm loading up some pictures here to show you guys a little bit.
I was very blessed to have Joseph as our tour guide when I visited Israel recently. So he's not a tour guide that takes you to the holy place and is like, this is what it is, and then like moves aside and lets the pastor teach. No, like, you get Joseph, when you hire Joseph as your tour guide, you are hiring him not as a tour guide, but as a teacher. He tours you to these places, yes, but his job is to teach you while you're there and to make the Bible come alive in your mind. And that was, you want to talk about a crazy experience. I can't wait to go back. Want to go back so bad. There's a very special place. And I think the reason why Israel is so special is described in Deuteronomy, because even though we know that God is omnipotent, he has the ability to be everywhere at once. The Bible is very explicit to us in saying that the only place that God has his eyes locked constantly, the only place in the world where his gaze never wavers from, even though he has the ability to be everywhere at once and be everywhere with you, the one place that his eyes are constantly is in the Holy Land, specifically on Jerusalem, but in the promised land of between the Mediterranean and the Jordan River. And so that's a cool thing that I think that is very true. And having been to Israel and experienced it there, experienced what it's like to be there, there's something different about that place than there is anywhere in the world that I've been so far. And I wouldn't say that I've been to a whole lot of places, but I've been across the country here in the United States, and there is nowhere that has the spiritual presence just subconsciously that Israel has, man. It is a beautiful country. And it's talk about making the Bible come alive for you.
So
wild.
The good stuff. That's all good stuff. So this is Corey Taylor. And Corey talks about his porn addiction, alcoholism, and there's a little bit of everything he talks in there. And he also talks about, the guys were really surprised that he opened up about a friend of his that committed suicide. It's a very emotional. All of these interviews are emotional and heavy. So I just want to give you an idea. These are testimonies of these guys' lives and the shape that they were in and the mistakes that they made. They were totally transparent and open and made themselves very vulnerable to the podcast and to our LTF Nation. I'm gonna call it LTF. Let's Talk Fortitude. So let's call it the LTF Nation. So I'm so thankful that there are men like Corey out there and JJ. This is JJ, military vet. He started out in the Marine Corps. Got emotional when he talked about stepping on the yellow feet at boot camp and how it saved his life. Got out for a short period of time, crossed over and went into the Army and retired. Talks about how how he was molested as a young child, the issues and mistakes that he made coming through life. It's a 3-hour podcast. If you can't get through it all in 3 hours at one time, I highly, highly recommend.
And I have to bring up one point about that podcast. The story portion of that podcast is really cool, but the story portion and JJ's testimony, it really only takes about an hour and 20 minutes of that podcast. There's a portion, the vast portion of the back end of that podcast is almost like a Bible study. You guys start pulling out your Bibles and you guys start actually having this really great discipleship conversation. And for me, JJ's story was great. JJ's testimony was fantastic. The part that I loved, that as I was sitting there switching back and forth, sometimes I zone out, man. Sometimes I'm switching back and forth into what's saying, and I'm hearing it, but I'm not paying a ton of attention other than to know when I need to change camera angles. When you guys started pulling out your Bibles and talking about stuff that wasn't just people's stories, but was applicable to multiple people's lives, the energy in the room changed. The energy in the room changed for the better, not because JJ's story isn't good, but because the story switched to the revelation of Christ and you guys discipling each other as Christ has called us to. And that was cool. So I really encourage you guys, if you guys are going to listen to it, you need to hear JJ's story. It's awesome. But the Bible study element that comes on the back end of it is just, it's on a different level. It's really, really cool to be a part of that.
So I hope I got to give Leah a shout out. JJ's daughter, she actually supported us and had JJ sent me a picture of her supporting us with the Shelter Hole t-shirt on while she was at youth camp. And Chad will tell you this, when we showed up there, what was it, Chad, Wednesday evening after we shot Derek's podcast, she was there. Yeah. And was very open, man, about how God is moving in her life and her friend's life. She attends Ouachita Christian School. But the young lady is I tell you what, man, it gives me hope to see what's happening in the youth in Louisiana, in Monroe, West Monroe, Louisiana, because they are just, they're something else, man. They are really, really in revival there. But the thing about it is that these guys are doing is they're not just leading people to the Lord and then dropping them off, say, okay, see you later. And that's one thing about the men's retreats in Louisiana is when you go to a men's retreat, I was talking to JJ, I said, man, these guys, and now listen, not everybody comes out of that retreat and just goes bonkers for the Lord or totally sold out for the Lord. They still struggle because when you drive out that gravel road and hit the hard top off of Camp Chioka there in West Monroe, the devil's waiting to hit you with that old sinful ball bat again. And he's going to jump on your back and ride you because the last thing he wants you to do is becoming a warrior for Christ. So they have not one, not two, not four, not five, not 10, but a whole page of Bible studies that you can attend anywhere from 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning to at noontime in the evenings. You can zoom into them. So there's no excuse. If you truly want to grow and get discipled and get to know Christ in a more intimate way, they have it. Duck Commander has one. JJ and them have one. They're all over the place, all the different churches. And here's a big thing, Chad. I want to just stipulate right now. It's almost like they have broken down denominational barriers in that city because Church of Christ, Assembly of God, Southern Baptist, they're all coming together to do these retreats, and they're all there for the same, and they understand that when you're totally, full gospel Pentecostal, there's going to be manifestations of the Spirit that may take place. But hey, that's their belief. Nobody shuts them down. They don't get in an argument over it. They operate and agree on the one thing, which is the death, burial, and resurrection of Jesus Christ and his blood shed for our sins. That's the one thing that they all agree on, and that's that's the principle that they operate on and hold these retreats. And it is making such a huge impact. Now here we go with that word impact again, right? They're not just influencing their city, they're impacting it for the cause of Christ with what they're doing. So anyway, I wanted to go there, and then you got Andy Roberts.
Oh gosh, yeah. And here's something else I want to share about these guys, because Andy's story hit home with me. Out of all of them, so Corey's was the only one that I teared up in, but Andy's was the one I think I paid the most attention to, because I identified very deeply with Andy's story, and so I'll take this story in a couple of different ways. But Andy's, if you want to know what Andy's podcast is like and what he went through, you need to go and watch it. I'm not going to sit here and rehash his story, but it spoke to me because I saw myself very much in that, because I was exposed to pornography for the first time at the age of 12, and being in a hyper masculine realm such as football, especially in high school, that was extremely secular. You know, we said the Lord's Prayer before every football game, but how many of the guys that were there actually knew Christ? I don't know, because during football practice all week, when we break it down for certain drills, we're breaking it down on porn star names. You know what I mean? So it's a very strange thing, and that's something that we laugh about it. We think it's funny because dudes will be dudes, right? Whatever, and that's not accurate. It's not accurate. It's not good. And that's something that even after having become a Christian, I've struggled with my entire life. And I am thankful. I'm proud that I have moved beyond that. I am very happy to say that part of my life is behind me. When I got baptized, when I got immersed in the Jordan River while in Israel, that was what I was immersing myself for. That's what so if you study Torah, the idea of immersion is supposed to make you clean. And you typically only immerse at certain times of day. It's typically only in the evening, and the reason why is because anytime that God's presence is felt, or most of the time that God arrives or reveals Himself in the Torah to His followers and His believers, like Abraham and them, it's almost always in the evening. And so the idea is that the spiritual presence of the Lord that can help make you clean is present in the evening, and then that's when you immerse yourself. That's one interpretation of it. I'm not a rabbinic scholar, so I'm not going to sit here and say that I know everything about Torah, but that is a general gist of it. And so when you immerse yourself, you go down and you're brought back up and you are clean, right? This is the same type of immersion that we have now turned and interpreted as baptism, right? The death to self and the rebirth of the new person of you and Yeshua. We don't have to immerse in mikvahs. We don't have to be baptized over and over and over again for the salvation of our sins. However, we do it and can do it more than one time symbolically, as a point of birth into a new thing, a new phase of life, or when we are intentionally letting something go and we have made our peace with where we were and what we have done, and that we are moving on from that thing. And that's what that was for me. I actually specifically requested people who were taking videos and stuff and pictures, and everybody was treating it almost like it was almost like a production. And I specifically told people, nobody video me, nobody take a picture of me. It's not a production. Because when I got immersed, the thing that I was immersed over was me letting go of that battle of pornography, of me letting go of pornography's hold in my life, that I knew that if I didn't make that peace with Yeshua and the previous self, and to let go of it completely, and to not just be cleansed of it, but to give up the battle against it, to know that there is no victory in my flesh over this thing, that it is only through the grace of God that I can have it. Emptying myself of that fight and being immersed and coming back out, I knew was necessary if I wanted to have a long and healthy marriage. My wife was there with me, and she was with me in that moment. She understood exactly what I was doing. And I think that brought us closer together. But Andy's podcast is specifically about that fight in his life. And so that I identified very deeply with that moment. And all of these podcasts is another thing. While I have people's attention, or if I've lost their attention, I want to get their attention back, because there's when I talk about the 501c3 thing that I revealed before, and how Let's Talk Fortitude is a product of Bamidbar Media Ministries. There is a song called Bamidbar that inspired that name for us. And one of the very last verses of that song says, "There can be no victory without a war." It is a song of praise for God. But one of the things that it says is there can be no victory without a war. And so one of the reasons why all of these testimonies that we're talking about that we got from these guys are so heavy is because they are testimonies of the victory that came through the war. The heaviness is the war and what they've come through and who they've become and the victory that Christ has given them through these things. That is the victory. But you have to understand the war. You have to go through the war in order to have victory. So if you are going through a war right now, understand that the war is there. The demons are there for you to overcome, not because Satan is powerful, but because Christ is redemptive. And in order for you to change and to understand the glory and salvation of Christ, you have to understand what it's like to have a war. So that's something that I wanted to impart on this episode as to why all of those stories are so important, because every single one of them, just like the Torah and the Tanakh and the New Covenant writings, every last one of them, including our Jesus stories, our God stories, somehow reveal Christ. That's the meta narrative of the entire thing.
Yeah, I was looking for I was looking for a picture of Derek. I don't know where his is at. So anyway, I'll find it. Lisa, maybe I can put his thumbnail up. I'll find it here in a minute. But yeah, Corey, being in the military, man, especially in the Navy, I mean, that porn was just, I don't know that I was ever addicted to it, but I have been exposed to it. I mean, I've done my due diligence, don't get me wrong. And, Andy becomes very vulnerable and very transparent. And I'm hoping to get Andy and his wife on. Also, with some of these guys, their wives were actually Catholic. They were in Catholicism who have now converted to Christianity. And so I want to get to, talk about some of that too. So the next guy I want to talk about is Fitz.
Good big old Jeff, man. There are very few people in this world that stand next to you and make you look small.
I'm gonna tell you what, man. They raise them big and feed them well down there.
Jeff's big boy, ain't he? Man, and I'm not talking about big again.
Somewhere between 6'2" and 6'4", something like that. He's big.
He's got to be 6'2" because you're 6 foot, right? So he's got to be 6'2", and he's standing behind you, and he's still out next to you. And not
he's
big,
a little better shape than I am. I'm fatter than Jeff is. So anyway, Jeff was he stopped coaching and went into the FCA, and he talks about that. Talks about the struggles, talks about, some of the, just the love of what he's doing. And here's what I didn't know about the FCA and what Jeff does is it's sort of like he's a missionary, man. He's paid off of donations and funds and giving is how he operates. So it's not like he knows he's going to get paid $35,000-$40,000 a year. And then, his paycheck could, go up and down. So, I mean, that's something we need to, everybody needs to think about if they want to give to the FCA, or if somebody wants to get in touch with these guys, kind of find out what they do, or, I'm sure they'd talk to you.
Let me take the guests, our listeners back for a second to what I just said about my experience in high school football and my experience in college football, and even leading up to that, right? Is if there is a group that needs missionaries, if there is a mission field that is present in the United States, probably bigger than any other, that has the biggest, we'll call it school, right? Think school of fish, of vulnerable individuals to the lies of the enemy, because that is one thing that I will say that that is the only power that the enemy has over us is the ability to lie to us and to make us fall for those lies, and therefore becoming our own worst enemy. Right? The ability to destroy us does not come from without; it comes from within. And the only thing that the enemy has to do is enable us by getting us to believe a bunch of lies. And so, if there is a young group, if there is a school that is impressionable, that needs to be fished, to be fishers of men towards, right? Like if that analogy means anything to you, it is specifically young men in these sports, and football and baseball and basketball and soccer and whatever. It is those young men. And so what Jeff does with the FCA and treating those young men as their mission field to go through and make sure that the enemy doesn't have an opportunity to get his claws in and to get purchase in those young men's lives, at least not in the way that we typically understand it. That is a mission field. If there's any mission field that is really worth investing your life into, man, like that has got to be one top of, maybe not top of the list, but it's daggum close.
Yeah, so Jeff loves those athletes, and just like, I mean, if you want to see another picture of Jeff, again, that's Jeff there baptizing one of those football players from ULM in the Ouachita River there at the park. And like I said, it was flooding at the time. And then so I want to go back and talk about this one as well. So we kind of skipped over this one a little bit. This is Derek McQueen, Celebrate Recovery at WFR.
And this was back when we still had the old shelter hole logo stuff going on. This is the last logo I made for the shelter hole before we decided that the shelter hole was going to get merged with Let's Talk Fortitude. So I feel like I had finally found the format that worked great for the shelter hole, and then it disappeared.
Hey, it's a living, breathing organism, that's for sure. So Derek was shot. I mean, he talks about Derek is a true Cajun from Southern Louisiana. Wonderful man of God. This guy is super intelligent. Graduated high school with like a 4.2 GPA. Played baseball in college. Super athlete. Had everything in the world going for him, and the next thing you know, he got wrapped up with the wrong woman, and down the road of drugs and destruction he went. And it's an awesome testimony. And he has an unbelievable testimony. You just got to go listen to him. Now God's blessed him. He's married. He's got a baby. He's got an adopted son, and he loves those. He loves his family better than anything. I tell you what, you talking about somebody that it reminds me of when, Christ healed someone and they jumped up and started dancing or whatever. I mean, that to me, that's Derek McQueen. He's the type of, whenever you talk to him, he is so grateful and so thankful for what God has done in his life. And there's not enough that Derek can do. There's not enough that Derek can do to repay. He knows he can't repay Christ for what he's done, but he can. But he doesn't do what he's doing to be saved. He does what he's doing because of what Christ has done for him. So he's not doing anything to earn his salvation. And I tell you what, because of his salvation, he's helping turn the world upside down and lives upside down for Christ and to help deliver people. And he's helping to do that with Ryan Rucker there at WFR. And Ruck was going to come on. It was kind of a last minute thing. He really didn't know. I didn't know if Ruck would come on or not. Ruck's got, he was part of that Duck Dynasty thing. He was on a few episodes, and I didn't want, I don't want to bug him or have him think that's what it is. But I'm going to tell you somebody else that was a gangbanger, drug trafficker. That I tell you what, that his life was changed and saved by the saving grace of Christ. That guy is, and now he is engaged to be married, Chad. I don't know if you know that or not. He proposed to that young lady not too long ago. So he's engaged. And he and Derek are actually in business together with What did you look? Did you find the name of that? Their homes?
No, I couldn't find it. I checked on a bunch of different ones. It had a.
I think it's in the. Let me see if it's in this description on YouTube. Take over for a minute.
Yeah, I'm not exactly sure, but I had something that was tugging at me.
So while Chad's thinking about that, so when we went to the ranch, JJ opened it up. I mean, he just gave us full reign. We bunked in his bunkhouse there, and that ranch is a very, very, very special place. And God's doing great things. That He's moving there right now. They're adding on to what we call like the chow hall or meeting area. They've already expanded it out by 700 square feet. Expand the chow hall. They're making a smokehouse or a cookhouse in like a screened-in cabana that was off to the side of that, where they're going to have all their smokers and cookers. And they've leaned to that to add on to it. And then they're building a huge conference room or conference building for a conference room and bunks so that they can hold retreats and conferences there. And man, I am so excited to see what God is going to do at that place. That is unreal.
And it is very likely that we will end up shooting a movie out there before too long. I've already talked to JJ about the potential of using that if we get the right script and need that location. He's already given me the thumbs up. So you guys might be seeing a Forerunner Productions film being shot out there before too long.
Oh, it's Awaken 514.
Yeah, that's what I was looking for. I couldn't find their logo on the WFR website or anything, but yeah, Awaken 514.
Yeah, it's Awaken 514 Recovery Homes. So,
and they own that now. They were just working for it or helping support it or something through that, and Derek
they purchased it.
Yep, Derek and Brian both they own that, and they are taking it and trying to make it something that it wasn't before. More power to them, man. Absolutely. Gung ho.
So not only do they have men's retreats there, but they also have youth retreats, man, between Christ Church, WFR, and North Monroe. I don't know how many teenagers they've baptized. And I know Sadie Robertson will have conferences where she speaks. I've seen pictures, man, where they had troughs out filled full of water and just baptizing hundreds of people. It's amazing. And they don't care where they're at. They can be at the Ouachita River. They can be at somebody's pool. They can be in a trough. They can be in a baptismal. They don't care. They're going to dunk you one way or another, man. If you want to be baptized, they'll find somewhere to put you in the water. JJ's Ranch, they've got a pond out there. He baptizes there.
Well, I mean, here's the cool thing is that biblically that is awesome, because when you study the Torah, which is and when you understand John the Immerser, John the Baptist, in the reasoning why he was baptizing in the Jordan River and how they were using mikvahs and stuff like that, is in order for you to be cleansed, is that the waters have to be living waters, right? Because living waters, flowing waters of the springs, rain, these things that provide sustenance to the land and to the people, is a representation of Yahweh, is a representation of the intimacy of God and his provision for the people. And so when you're talking about taking people down into the river, man, that gets me excited, because that is one of the absolute coolest and most accurate representations of what immersion, of what baptism is supposed to be. Immerse yourself in the glory of God, in the living waters, right? It even talks about that in the book of Revelation. Immerse yourself in the living waters and come back clean, right? Be born again as a follower of Christ, being filled with the Holy Spirit, allowing what used to be separated, right? That veil that used to separate the Holy of Holies, let that veil be torn from the blood of Christ, and let it now imbibe the Holy of Holies, which is in you. And that aspect of it, just that I love. Whenever you have a moving, freely flowing body of water, whether it be a pond or a creek or a lake, when you have that representation of the living waters, that is it. Like baptism, if you got to do a trough or a tub or something like that, do it, man. I'm not saying don't get baptized, but there is something that just touches my spirit whenever, and then gets me excited whenever I hear them talk about going down to the creek or to the river to the living waters and doing baptisms there.
So, I know, man, we're about an hour and a half, but I'm going to keep going for just a minute. So we pretty much covered everybody that we've recorded with. I do want to give a shout out, or I do want to mention about White's Ferry Road. If you will back up, I'm not sure what episode number it is. I'll try to, I'll look it up here in a minute. I'm not going to do it while I'm trying to talk to you. So I was listening while I was mowing the grass a while back, and they had Mac Owen on there, who used to be on the, I forget what they called it, before Duck Dynasty, Duck Commander. I believe it's what it was. It was called Duck Commander. They were shooting hunting videos, and that's how they actually got discovered. Benelli started sponsoring them. But anyway, through Mac was part of a ministry where they started bringing in addicts, people with addictions, into White's Ferry Road. And Mac went to them and said, and I'm paraphrasing here, so please don't hold me to this. Please go. I encourage you, go look it up. I'll find it here in a minute. I'm going to turn it over to Chad. I'll find it. I'll put it up on here.
Now you can
go listen to the history of all the way back, right about the time of Phil's conversion. If that tells you how far back it goes, that's how long Celebrate Recovery has been operating. They tell you about how it all come about how it's actually Celebrate Recovery now, because it hasn't always been Celebrate Recovery. Mac played a big part in that. And if we
episode
knew the people,
665, episode 665 of the Unashamed podcast.
Episode 665.
Yep. Yeah,
Okay.
it's called
episode 665 on Unashamed, the Unashamed podcast. Go check it out and listen to it. You won't be disappointed, man. I mean, Mac gives a great testimony, and it's that church reminds me a lot of where I was born and raised in West Virginia, about how tight knit it is. It's a family type church. Everybody, if one person in the family goes there, they all go there, and it's steeped with tradition. But however, when I went to the retreat, now it's a Church of Christ. They don't say that. They just call it White's Ferry Road Church. But it's actually White's Ferry Road Church of Christ. And all the Church of Christ that I've ever been around, whenever I was growing up, my whole life, never had live music in the church. They just didn't believe in it. That's something they didn't do. So when we did the coming home on Sunday morning after the retreat at WFR, they actually brought the worship band in, because on Sunday mornings they have two separate services, and wherever Al or Mike is preaching or whoever's preaching, they pipe it in via video to the other room. And usually they're in the main sanctuary. So in the main sanctuary, they'll have a cappella worship. Then in the fellowship center, they'll do have a worship band in there. And when I went there, it was the first time in the history of that church that they had live music in the sanctuary. I don't know if you knew that or not, Chad.
No, I didn't.
So some of the guys in church that were in the retreat, that were older men, said, "Look, please pray for our families." He said, one of them said, "My mom." It was Randy's actually who it was. So Randy said, "Please pray for my mom. She's went to church there her whole life, and she's going to be very uncomfortable with this, because this is just out of the norm. This is not what they do. They've never done this before." And it was amazing. And there was one point where Ryan Lee, the music just went away, and everybody there was just singing a cappella. Man, it was like angels. You didn't want to sing, you just wanted to listen. And so I am so thankful for the men that I met there and to watch them and what happens. And Chad, I'm hoping, and my prayer is that in September, you'll be able to attend your first WFR retreat. And I'm going to go team. And I'm just hoping that I hope that you have the same experience I did. And I'm sure you will. I mean, if you go into it with an open heart and mind of worship and just letting God speak to you, it'll be an awesome experience for you. I know that it will.
Well, I'm looking for, even if it's not happening in September, I'm looking forward to going eventually. I mean, if the presence of those men that are there, if that's in any way reflected in what the retreat is, and it sounds like that's exactly what it is, but on steroids. If the presence of the Lord and the just the general feeling of what those men bring together whenever they are together, and the brotherhood, the camaraderie, and the discipleship that's happening. If that's in any way a reflection of what's happening at that retreat, I'm excited to finally get a chance to go.
Hey, look, before we get off of here, I want to give a quick shout out to two podcasts, two guys that have agreed to come on the podcast. I'm just going to go ahead. I'm going to go Brian Sexton with the intentional influencer or intentional encourager influencer. Ever since he's made that statement, I can't. So the intentional encourager podcast is Brian Sexton. Great podcast. Now, he's not somebody that's got millions of followers or views or anything like that. But if you go listen to him, he's amazing. He has great content. The other one is Chris Randall with, oh, goodness gracious.
My Crazy God Story.
Yeah. And he's agreed to come on too, but he has a situation to where he has certain days that he can record and days that he can't. And I just got to make sure that I can work it out in my schedule to meet his schedule. I'm a little more flexible, I believe, than what he can be. So anyway, those two guys, man, are amazing. Go check out their podcasts, and I don't think you'll be disappointed. Chris's stuff, his Crazy God stories, man. I mean, they're amazing, and they're only a minute and a half to 3 minutes long. They're not very long at all. They're pretty short. Now, he does have a few podcasts. He's very knowledgeable of the scripture, loves the Lord with all his heart, mind, soul, and spirit. And so does Brian. They both have a great sense of humor. And I really look forward to bringing those guys on and getting to know them. Chad, thanks for your time. Tell your wife I said thank you for giving you up for a while. And at least your mom hasn't hit me over the head with a ball bat. I've kind of commandeered the house today to make this happen. But man, I am so pleased with this new software, man. StreamYard seems to be working out good. I mean, I'm able to do things here that I've never been able to do before, and I'm just so thankful. And it's because it takes. People don't realize, man, when you use 3 different cameras, and that's why we bought. What's that box we bought? The
Black Magic A10.
That Black Magic box that we bought. So that because what Chad was originally doing was taking audio of whatever mics we were using and 3 cameras and having to overlay each one of them and match all that up, and it was hours. So I finally talked him into getting this Black Magic box, and what it does is it allows him to switch between camera angles without having to marry. It automatically matches up and marries all the audio with it as you're switching through. You don't have to go back and do all that. But at the same time, if he's going to be traveling, doing all these movies and filming and shooting and doing all this stuff himself, he's only going to have a certain amount of time that he can travel with me.
Yeah.
So
until I get to the
trying
point
to make
where
things a little easier, and
until we get to the point where we can get Bamidbar off the ground and actually like hire a team for you and get you running around and stuff like that. And we'll see what's going on with that down the road.
Well, you know, man, it's so to give you an idea, we would never. I don't know if I told you this, but Chris Randall he's over closer to Corpus Christi type of Texas, man. That's way out there.
Yeah.
Then you got Brian Sexton. He's in Barbersville, West Virginia. I mean, there's just no way.
Nope.
I don't have enough vacation time. And if I use all my vacation time for these podcasts, I am going to get hit with the ball bat. So what we're going to do is we'll probably save, you know, I've already got it scheduled to try to go to Louisiana and shoot while we're there. We've got a few people that I don't know that they'd be able to do what we're doing now. I don't know if they have the ability, the knowledge to do it. So we're going to have to go do that on site. But I'm going to do as many of them as I can like this before we go so that we don't waste their time or ours. And that way, if you can't go, if for some reason you can't go, then they're already done. I can just go visit and not have to worry about it anyway.
Yeah, right.
So
it makes
anyway,
the day a lot easier.
We're going to do another one. We may do it tomorrow real quick where I'm going to talk to Chad about his short film. The music of Eric Zahn. I've seen the shortcut. Hey, and before we get out of here real quick, I don't know if you're going to be able to get this posted up. So you got 2 spots filled. You need 8 more spots filled for a test.
Test audience, man. So one of the things that people don't realize is in the filmmaking business, after a film is made, they'll pick for big budget film like Avatar or something like that. They'll pick 200 people or something like that, and they'll give them a test screening and a questionnaire, and they'll fill it out and they'll send it back, and that way they can gauge the audience's stuff. So we're doing the same thing with the music for Eric Zahn. We're doing a test audience, and we've got 10 slots open. Just because I don't have the manpower to filter through 200 people. So we got a test audience, 10 slots. The way that we're doing this is it's first come, first serve with prioritization to those that support us on locals.com. So if you want to go to forerunnerproductions.locals.com and make an account and become a supporter there, you get first dibs at being a part of this because your support means the world to us. You can see it down there at the bottom. It's the first link that's listed down there. It's forerunnerproductions.locals.com. If you want to jump straight to the support page and support the movies that we're making, like Blue Side of the Mountain is what we're calling it, the story about Jacob, you can support that directly by going to forerunnerproductions.locals.com, and that's also where the first place and the top place that we're going to be pulling our test audience from, because we want to give the people that invest in us the prioritization for all the things that we are doing. Now, if we still have slots open and you are following us on our Facebook page, on our Instagram page, or whatever, right? Chad Garrett Official, 400 Productions on Facebook. Again, Chad Garrett Official and 400 Productions on Instagram. You guys, if you want to be a part of this thing, we will take and fill any open slots that are available with people from those platforms as well. So make sure that you guys are following us on some type of platform and can be a part of the test audience. And all that looks like is you'll get a copy of the fine cut that we're getting ready to make, because we are going to have a short questionnaire based off of that fine cut, and we're going to send it to you guys or give you access to viewing it online. And then from there, you guys can view it and fill out the questionnaire, send it back to us so that we can make that film better. This is how you guys get to be a part of the filmmaking process without having to know exactly what happens in the filmmaking process. So it's a really cool way to get an early peek as to what films do and help us make a better project and better product.
Hey, listen, man, Chad, thank you so much. Can't wait to see the music of Eric Zahn and to see what you do with your new movie coming up. And you know, hey, there's another one that we I forget what I named it now that we did earlier. Anyway, there's going to be a video that posts just before this one And hopefully you've already seen it. But anyway, Chad talks about his movie making experience, and we're going to go into more of that in our next one that we shoot tomorrow about the music of Eric Zahn. No, that's not. We're going to talk about what are we talking about tomorrow?
Yeah, the music of Eric Zahn. That's right.
That's what I thought. It's getting late, man. We've been doing this all day today. Hey, listen, don't laugh at me. Laugh with me. I don't care. Hey, what is it? Si says, if you can't laugh at yourself, you got problems. So I'm laughing at me, man. So, but anyway, don't laugh at me. Just laugh with me. We'll laugh together because, hey, I'm getting old and I love it. And I'm wrinkled and saggy, but hey, I've earned it. And Jesus loves me and I don't care about it. I hope you love me too. But anyway, thank you for joining in to Let's Talk Fortitude. And so you're going to be hearing me call this LTF more because it's just easier than Let's Talk Fortitude or get tongue-tied. But anyway, thanks for joining us on LTF. And, man, we will see you guys in the next one. And we so appreciate it.